the American people stand firm in the faith which has inspired this nation from the beginning. We believe that all men have a right to equal justice under law and equal opportunity to share in the common good. We believe that all men have the right to freedom of thought and expression. We believe that all men are created equal because they are created in the image of God. From this faith, we will not be moved.
Hello, and welcome to the Freedom of Thought podcast. I am your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awijan. Freedom of Thought is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps, and I thank each and every one of you once and always for downloading and listening to this show. It is a great pleasure to be back on board with you once again today. As well, 62 years ago today, November 22nd, 1963. You know what happened, right? John F. Kennedy was assassinated while riding in a motorcade. Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly fired shots from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, fatally wounding the president and injuring Texas Governor John Connally. Kennedy was pronounced dead about 30 minutes later at Parkland Hospital. Now that whole Lee Harvey Oswald part, just flush that part out because, I'm shaking my head to that. No. I do not believe Lee Harvey Oswald. It was this lone gunman. Was he involved? I'm sure he wanted John F. Kennedy dead. He probably did. But if anything, he was exactly what has been said he had been saying. He was a patsy the whole time. He was pretty much set up to be used as the patsy, the pawn. Used, basically. As to who officially killed John F. Kennedy, it's not 100% sure, but, well, it's probably not one person. It's probably not a couple people. It's as a certain president years later, on September 11th, 1991, said, "It is a big idea, a new world order." In my opinion, that's what I believe. That's who and what I believe assassinated John F. Kennedy. Because the New World Order is filled with secret societies, secret oaths, and secret proceedings. Merely weeks before John F. Kennedy's death, he mentioned this at the beginning of his speech.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
What do you think of that? Well, John F. Kennedy was not for the New World Order at all. John F. Kennedy was not a perfect man. He was definitely not without flaw or sins, and nobody is. Nobody is. Donald Trump, same thing. But historically, it appears that anybody who's been against the New World Order one way or another has wound up either wounded or killed. Wounded or killed, including a man by the name of Abraham Lincoln, James A. Garfield, Ronald Reagan, who survived. The common denominator between the two presidents that were shot from 1963 up to 1981 is George H.W. Bush. You know why? Because George H.W. Bush was in the CIA. John F. Kennedy had basically a feud with the CIA for a long time. He was actually trying to abolish it. George H.W. Bush was a fairly young person in his late 20s in the CIA in Dallas, Texas in 1963, November 22nd, the very day, the very moment it happened. George H.W. Bush was in the vicinity. I'm not accusing George H.W. Bush of the Kennedy assassination, but, he was there. Interesting, isn't it? He was there. George H.W. Bush was the vice president at the time Ronald Reagan was shot. And, well, what did George H.W. Bush talk about during his entire presidency of 4 years? But nonetheless, what did he talk about? Pretty much the whole time. The New World Order. The New World Order, the illumination of 1,000 points of light. The big idea. Yep. Well, should we listen to what he said?
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Crazy, huh? And what's really interesting about that one is just kind of the excitement Bush had in that 30-second clip. Kind of at the beginning when he was saying, for ourselves, just the way he kind of like leaned back like, here we go, baby. And how he's like, and when we are successful, and we will be. Like, yeah, there's nothing you're going to do to stop this. I still remember back in the day, I was 5th grade at the time, must have been 90 or 91, whereas I do believe the teacher brought it up. The teacher of my class brought it up at the time saying, don't, like people are taking this too seriously. Don't, this whole New World Order thing is not the one world government that's being brought up in the book of Revelation, the tribulation, the end, the end, at the end of the day. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. The New World Order it was the beginning of the end, and it's like the end of the end. It's, yeah, when it comes to like it, going from the 60s up to today. Did you notice how dramatically the country changed? Just from history, for somebody like me who was born in 1979, or people that may have been significantly older, or even significantly younger just by paying attention to history. Things changed dramatically at the end of with the death of John F. Kennedy, going into Mr. Lyndon Baines Johnson. Things changed so dramatically. That brought us the Vietnam War. It was like almost immediately. That brought us the Great Society. That wasn't too quick. That wasn't too long after that. When things went from, a country that was united to a country that was quite divided. Things got very divided as the 60s continued. Protests, fighting, violence, and murder. More murder. Bobby Kennedy was also assassinated by the same New World Order. Martin Luther King. Probably about the same thing, I'd have to say. The division was incredible. Obviously, all kinds of crazy, nasty protests that probably were once thought of to be peaceful that ended up not being peaceful. And the country became more and more divided. During the Ronald Reagan era, it felt like the country became more and more united. And then when George H.W. Bush got into office, the country became more divided again, and pretty much has been more and more and more divided up until today. Just in case another Ronald Reagan type got in office, say a Donald J. Trump, who has a bigger mouth than Ronald Reagan, but at the same time, somebody who was not for the New World Order, somebody who was America first, would get in office, that the country would be divided enough that his progress wouldn't be nearly as productive as a Ronald Reagan. So, crazy to think about. Obviously, Ronald Reagan's behavior did change a bit, unfortunately, with the assassination attempt, as basically they were like, oh yeah, this will get H.W. Bush in office and eliminate Reagan in the process. Connections from the killer to George H.W. Bush have been out there. Do your research on that one. Obviously, I'm not reporting it like guaranteed, but that's been the conversation, that the the person that attempted to assassinate Ronald Reagan was connected to George H.W. Bush, and also that, again, the person was basically used as a patsy at the end of the day, whether they got, whether that he was successful or not, that he would pretty much be just kind of like on his own, basically. He'd be a patsy, basically, at the end of the day, that wouldn't be able to really say or do anything and taken seriously one way or another. So quite scary and quite fascinating at the same time, how it's all kind of linked together. Kennedy, Reagan, and all the way up to today, the way the country became more and more divided ever since. This country wasn't racially divided way back in the past. Now, people were not treated correctly. People of minority and African descent, of course, were not treated correctly, no. But at the same time, some people did treat them well, and there wasn't nearly as much division in this country. It's one thing to treat people fairly, be kind and honest, and just treat people fairly, be kind, and all that. I'm not going to turn this into a whole race episode, because that's not the idea here. It's just that obviously a lot of that kind of got sparked into the 1960s after the death of John F. Kennedy. That's kind of the point. And a guy like Lyndon Johnson got it going with the Great Society. That helped divide things, obviously. It did. That absolutely helped divide things. Where it goes from a conversation of fairness and, treating everybody fairly and equally to, you owe me something, damn it. You owe me something. Bleep you. We're gonna tear your buildings down, and anytime something happens that we don't like, we're gonna, raise hell. That's wrong. That's wrong. I mean, two wrongs don't make a right. Racism is wrong, but basically coming back the other way is just the same thing. You're just as bad, or worse, if you're vandalizing or whatever, or you're just accusing everybody of racism every time you don't get your way of something. That's not how people back in the past behaved. But then the sense of entitlement, the sense of basically give me everything you got, basically the Great Society. And at the same time, what has the Great Society truly accomplished? Nothing. Nothing. First of all, it did not unite the country at all. Secondly, it didn't really better anyone. It just made people dependent. It made people, less motivated. It made the family become less and less of a thing. So it's just frightening how all that kind of stems into today. The whole John F. Kennedy assassination clearly was a big idea. A new world order. Divide and conquer. That's what the John F. Kennedy assassination was all about. Divide and conquer. It was a big idea. It wasn't just get John F. Kennedy out of here so we can, go into Vietnam. Well, that was part of it. It wasn't just let's get this Great Society thing started so we can divide the country and also have these, ends vote for us for the next 100 years, which is exactly what Lyndon B. Johnson said. It was said. I'm not sure if it was recorded, and if it was, I don't have the audio of it. But he said, we'll have these ends voting for us for the next 100 years. Well, that's what they wanted, isn't that? Thankfully, a lot of people that they were so rudely describing in racist tones turned on them, at least in this last election, and hopefully that will continue. Unfortunately, not everything Trump has done since he started in office in late January has been hunky-dory just yet. But again, obviously, with all the damage done by the Biden administration and the Obamas and such, all the way back to Clinton opening the borders and kind of keeping them open, Bush doing absolutely nothing about it because he was about as Republican as I'm Democrat. Give me a break. Bush was no Republican. W. Bush was no Republican. Not as evil as his father, but he was no Republican. He was a rhino at absolute best. May very well have been a Democrat. I mean, they were even asking that on CNN. I clearly remember that, vividly remember that. Has he become a Democrat because of his spending style going into his second term, him being George W. Bush? That'd be the second guy with the name George Bush. So there's that conversation. to say the least. I'm kind of going down way too many rabbit holes here. But going back to Kennedy again, it felt like the country was more united. It felt like the country was more American. And again, yes, you want to. A lot of people might be listening to me and thinking he's just a "Make America White Again" type. Nothing to do with that at all. That's not what's being said. That's not what the thought process is. It's not about anybody's race or color. It all kind of stems back to attitude, entitlement. We don't need attitude and entitlement to be successful in this world. In fact, attitude and entitlement makes you less likely to be successful in this world. The more entitled and the worse attitude you have, the less likely you are going to move forward in your job. Like, go to my workplace. I won't tell you where I work, but honest to God, most people will agree with what I'm about to say. The people that complain the most and have the most entitled attitude usually end up not moving up, and they don't deserve to move up because they don't demonstrate skills. They don't demonstrate, they don't demonstrate skills. They don't demonstrate any type of productivity, output that really is deserving of any type of promotion. Sometimes people are able to whine and bitch their way, forgive my French, up. And it does happen, unfortunately. But that's where the real problem lies, when people do that kind of nonsense. It's just quite unfortunate at the end of the day. People of all races, creeds, colors, whatever, religions and such. There's just no need for entitlement. I think do it based on merit. Do it based on skill. And at the end of the day, everybody's happy because they earned it, regardless of what their race, religion, or whatever is, whatever group they're in. None of this secret society, secret oath, secret proceedings. None of this bullcrap. None of those people deserve to move to the top if that's what you're into. And that includes these angry groups out there, these identity politics. And it needs to stop, and it's not really helping anyone at the end of the day. Go ahead and hate me, call me a bigot, call me an angry white man, or whatever you want to call me. I am 50% white, coming from my mom's side. From my mom's side, 50% white. The man by the name of, it's the Willard family, Simon Willard, came to the United States in 1635, if you can believe that. 1635. So I believe a generation younger than the Pilgrims, or like a half generation younger than the Pilgrims that got here, depending on which Pilgrim we're talking about, because they came at all ages and sizes as well. Some of them were older, some of them were younger, particularly the ones that survived when they got into basically into Massachusetts there, Bunker Hill and all that cute stuff. So pretty cool. Yeah. What am I even talking about? But from my dad's side, when did my dad come to the United States of America? You ready? From Lebanon, on a ship, a boat, a ship, whatever you want to call it, a large boat, basically a ship. Came from Lebanon, across the Atlantic Ocean. What day did my dad arrive in the United States of America? November 22nd, 1963. What do you think of that? Could you imagine arriving in a new country, a new land? Maybe you know a couple words of the language, which happens to be English when it comes to the United States. At least I would like to believe. Borders, language, culture. Thank you, Michael Savage. Borders, language, culture. Agree with him 1,000% on that. But anyhow, the point. Could you imagine arriving in a new land, a new place, for you anyway? The president's been shot and he's dead. What the heck? I can't even imagine what that felt like. He's often described it as basically utter shock, like, you've got to be kidding me. The president's been shot? The president's dead? I just got here today, and the president's been shot and he's dead. You've got to be kidding. So can you imagine the irony of that? Now again, so I'm 50% Lebanese and 50%, well, it's English and German. The Germans basically kind of came into the family sometime in the 1800s. They came into the Willards, into Minnesota particularly. The Willards first arrived in like Massachusetts, and there's still some good number of them there. Some of them migrated over to Minnesota, Montana and other places. I believe even Alaska, but Minnesota, Montana, places like that. The Willards, down generation to generation to generation, down 12 generations to Joey Owygen, or Joseph Owygen, whatever you want to call me, or Palladino Joey, which I appreciate very much. PalladinoLive@gmail.com, right? So, yes, I'm Palladino Live. I'm Palladino Joey, but I'm also Joey Owygen with the name, my mother's maiden name of Willard. 12 generations in the making when it came to the United States. My dad, well, I'm the first generation to be born here from my dad's side. Pretty wild. First generation to be born here, 1979, not 1963 or anything. So it was a number of years later. What was it, 16 years later if you do the math, or 15 and 15 years, 9 months or so later? It's actually really weird to think about. Kennedy was assassinated Kennedy was assassinated less than 16 years before I was born. I'm kind of old, huh? A little bit, gosh. At the time, it's like the Kennedy assassination was, almost 16 years ago. It's been a little while. And then you put it into perspective. 16 years ago was what? 2008? What? Was it 2008? 2000? I don't know why I'm getting into all this crap. I apologize getting all this silliness, but 2009. It was 2009. Brett Favre was the Vikings quarterback. That's 16 years ago? That's weird. Wow. I'm shaking just thinking about how weird that is. Another rabbit hole, way too many, and I apologize. But, again, fascinating stuff. But that's the whole point. I'm not an angry white man, okay? that was too many rabbit holes, but I suppose that's what freedom of thought is all about, is rabbit holes, one way or another. It is amazing, though, the way publications and even like local radio shows like Dan Barrero and such, Bumper to Bumper with Barrero, the way they just dismiss any possibility that it could have been anything or anyone other than Lee Harvey Oswald in the Kennedy assassination. How can one random guy from the 6th floor of a building strike a man in a moving vehicle? I don't know. I suppose anything's possible, but I'll be shocked beyond belief if, at the end of the day, like say we when we all go to heaven and we get to see the truth of a lot of things, that happened because like God knows the truth. Was the result of Kennedy. I mean, that is why Kennedy was assassinated, or that is how Kennedy was assassinated, was just Lee Harvey Oswald. Odds are, yes. Well, yes, I'm sure he fired some shots, but that doesn't mean he connected. It truly doesn't, and I don't think he did. John F. Kennedy's last words, well, according to, Wikipedia and such, or, officially Google, I guess. His last words as the motorcade passed through the crowd, Texas First Lady Nellie Connolly commented to the president, "Mr. President, you can't say Dallas doesn't love you." Kennedy's reply was, "No, you certainly can't." So that was his last words. No, you certainly can't. Well, thank you for loving me, Dallas. And then not long after that, after receiving all those cheers and such, that was the end of that. So, horrible. Absolutely horrible. Lyndon Johnson was sworn in as president aboard Air Force One just hours later. And unfortunately, that was a turning point in this country. It truly was. And it was a very, 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 very negative one. Talk is, in his later years, Lyndon Baines Johnson had grown his hair out. Obviously, he was a heavy smoker. That was one of the reasons he died younger, of a heart attack, heart failure, that type of thing. Like, being a heavy smoker is not a good thing. He already had maybe not the best health in the world. He had a bad temper and this and that, vulgar personality. But he'd grown his hair out, and he was constantly in horrible regret. Like, what have I done to this country? What have I done? What have I done? What have I done? What have I done? Interesting, isn't it? Like, he was very upset with what he had done. He felt an incredible amount of guilt. So, hopefully by God's grace, Lyndon Johnson repented and he's in heaven today. A man several years earlier that also had tons and tons and tons of regret at the end of his life was Woodrow Wilson, who also, again, started up the federal income tax in 1917. or it's officially 1913, that the federal income tax began. Well, that's when it was voted upon and then officially got things going. But it was all a lie. They started it like it was going to be 100, only people that make over 100,000 a year, like basically corporations. That's where the federal income tax started, and then it just kind of kept getting increased, like less and less, it kept getting, basically like the amount that you had to make kept getting reduced, and the amount of people being taxed kept getting increased to a point of basically just about everybody's taxed, except people that don't do a damn thing, basically, were the ones that weren't getting taxed. To paraphrase what Woodrow Wilson said at the end of his life, was that he is the most unhappy man, that I am a most unhappy man. I have unwillingly ruined my country. It was something along those lines. Whereas, yes, obviously that federal income tax did some terrible, terrible damage to this country. And, well, here we are. Here we are all these years later being taxed up the wazoo by our state, especially if you live in Minnesota, California, Massachusetts, places like that, New York. Oh, yeah, Minnesota, we get taxed up the wazoo, man. California, of course. And that's just the state. But then you have the federal. Obviously, we get taxed pretty heavily federally as well. The fact that President Trump has put into law that there's no tax on tips or overtime is wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful move. And we appreciate that. It is funny how Kamala Harris basically is like, oh, yeah, no tax on tips, no tax on tips, and no tax on overtime and all that. Do you really think that she would have actually followed through on that? It's like, probably not. That was just to try to squeeze any type of, fence votes, fence voters in, and then just said, yeah, screw you, I'm not going to do that, but at least I'm in office now. I'm President Kamala Harris. Yeah, well, thank God that didn't happen. That would have been pretty frightening, to say the least. Yeah, it is interesting, though, how at least two major presidents that made two major moves that really set this country in the wrong direction. Hugely wrong direction. Creating more poverty, more division, more less class, less dignity, less anything, really. Just more and more dishonesty at the end of the day. More fraud, more BS. The federal income tax with Woodrow Wilson way back in the beginning of the 1900s, well, back in the teens. And, well, and, of course, the Great Society. Just an absolute joke. Absolute joke, to say the least. Sorry about this. Trying to type something. Yes, it was 1913. That's what I thought. I just wanted to make 100% sure, because it wasn't 17. That's when World War I started, the Great War. So, yes, the federal income tax, the 16th Amendment, and what was it, like 11? It's pretty frightening how all that took place. Interesting. And they were trying to help the Civil War way back in 62 to 72. That was the first time. It was kind of to help fund the Civil War effort. Interesting. But of course, obviously, Lincoln helped prevent this permanent federal income tax to happen. So that was, again, one of the reasons he was shot. It wasn't just because, you freed the blacks. It wasn't just because of that, though I'm sure that definitely was part of it. There's no doubt. But a huge part of it as well was this whole, again, creating this federal income tax. He was preventing that with the banks. He was trying to start the greenbacks, which would have been completely different, where we would not have had to been relying on banks to basically create money. Print money, create money. It bleeped everything up. The federal income tax started, but also, again, the Federal Reserve as well, all around the same time, which bleeped everything up. I mean, it dropped the value of money to a level of, well, several years ago, money that was worth a full dollar back when the Federal Reserve started had dropped down to 4 cents. I believe now it's down to about a penny. That's utterly ridiculous. And pennies are basically being obsoleted this year. They're becoming obsolete. It's the final year of the penny, which is, it's sad, but that's how it is. I mean, it costs more to make a penny than than the face value of a penny, which is kind of funny at the end of the day. And of course, Of course that would be the case. Copper's got to be worth more than a penny. Like, that's bad, but the amount of copper in a penny has got to be worth more than a penny. So they're basically just, there's no reason to have it at the end of the day. It's just insane. Yeah, December 23rd, 1913. It all kind of happened at the same time. The Federal Reserve was created and the federal income tax. So it's just an absolute travesty at the end of the day. Unreal to say the least. And yeah, and it was all based on lies when all that started. The amount of people that voted for it was during Christmas week. It was December 23rd to get the Federal Reserve started. They had so few people to vote that what did it pass, like 3-2 or something? It was like 5 people. It's pretty ridiculous, which there should have been a lot more people than that. But when it's like basically the day before Christmas Eve, it's one of the stupidest things ever at the end of the day. So just disgusting. It was, I believe it was November 11th, like the 11th hour, the 11th. It's just, the 11th month, the 11th day, the 11th hour, and the 11th year of 1911, and there's 9/11 and this and that. It's all, demonic bullcrap. And that's kind of when a lot of things started, going all the way back to, well, it wasn't 1911, but 1913. I apologize. But yeah, November 11th, 11th month, 11th day, 11th hour of, it's pretty wild stuff. It's pretty evil, actually, at the end of the day. I don't know why I said 1911, so my apologies for that. But insane how things happened going all the way back then. It's a bunch of crap, isn't it? But that's when all of that started. So, again, I mean, the presidents that were assassinated were opposed to this happening. They were opposed to this kind of thing happening. And, of course, all the stuff that took place during Lyndon B. Johnson's presidency as well, the Great Society, but also the Vietnam War and other crazy things that took place during that man's presidency, including false flag operations. You could just go on and on and on with what happened there. The USS Liberty was attacked, the Gulf of Tonkin event. Multiple false flag operations happened during the course of Lyndon B. Johnson's presidency. Gulf of Tonkin, that got things going with Vietnam. And of course, that was a false flag operation, where you're using, somebody's flag, basically, to make it appear like they're attacking you, and like, oh my God, look what they've done. And then, war, basically, is what took place there. And the USS Liberty as well, being nearly sank. It was supposed to sink, according to Lyndon Johnson himself, saying, I want that GD ship brought to the bottom. That'd be the ultimate false flag operation. But they did survive. Several men died, unfortunately, but they did survive. The ship did survive. It limped home, basically, with a lot of death and a lot of people basically living with trauma the rest of their life. And I can only imagine being attacked several times by by aircraft in a false flag operation. It is despicable, disgusting that kind of stuff happened. Very sad at the end of the day that dishonesty is used like that. Adolf Hitler did it. The Reichstag fire, intentionally setting the building on fire and putting a Polish army uniform on a mentally retarded person, mentally handicapped person, and shooting him and saying, look what they did. They burned the Reichstag building. They started it on fire. That is war. We're going to attack Poland. And that's how things got going in Europe to get World War II going, at least to invade Poland at the very least, going back into the late 1930s. So messed up stuff, absolutely messed up. That's what a false flag operation is. And that kind of stuff happened during the presidency of Lyndon Johnson. So horrible, horrifying, and sad stuff to follow in the footsteps of Adolf bleeping Hitler. That's great. It's wonderful. That's following the footsteps of Hitler. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Prescott Bush, basically like close friends with a man by the name of Adolf Hitler as well. Prescott Bush, father of H.W., grandfather of W. Oh, yeah. Joe Kennedy, like we said, again, the Kennedys weren't exactly angels either. No, I mean, Joe Kennedy was connected to the mafia, at least according to many stories. So do your research on that as well. But at the same time, John F. Kennedy, not nearly as bad and evil as any of these people at the end of the day. So remembering John F. Kennedy 62 years ago here on November 22nd, 2025. 60 years ago it took place, November 22nd, 1963. I've gone down on about 100 rabbit holes today, and I hope you don't mind, but man, there is a lot of conversation. Regarding the shaping of this country during the course of the 20th century into here we are in the 21st century, and why the country's so damn divided, and why a president like Donald Trump isn't looked on as maybe like a more lippy version of Ronald Reagan, which to me he is. Other people look at him as, oh my God, he's worse than the devil himself, when it's not true. We'll have more current stuff to talk about up and coming in the not too distant future regarding, obviously Mamdani getting elected, an absolute travesty. Minnesota, it's just nothing but bad people being elected here. Anytime we get one Republican anywhere, people freak out and get pissed off. And it's like, okay, so you have like 500 Democrats and we can't have like 2 or 3 Republicans here? You got to flip out about that? It takes 2 rings to fly, you jackasses. It takes 2 wings to fly. It's just only fair. I mean, hello. Like, can we not get represented at all? Does it have to be just a full-on dictatorship? It really can't be. That's just absolutely wrong. That's where democracy is a big joke at the end of the day versus a constitutional republic, which is what this country was founded on from day one. So there's that. Whew. What do you think? Want to share this show with your friends? Want to share this show? Could you please? That would be greatly appreciated. I want to wish all of you a wonderful Thanksgiving. It's one of my absolute favorite holidays of the year. It's got to be like top 2, basically. Christmas, Thanksgiving, right there. Easter's way up there. I think it's extremely underrated. It's a wonderful time of year. And of course, Christ is risen. Hello. Like, what's it all about? Christ is risen. Darn it. After, giving the ultimate sacrifice and such for our sins. Amazing. Thank you, Lord, for that. Christ is risen, no doubt about that. So we'll try to get more and more of these freedom of thoughts out there again to talk about the crazy crap that took place during the elections and such. Really apologize for the lack of shows. I truly do. I feel terrible about it, but of course the work schedule has been insanely difficult. We'll be down to one job again very soon, and I can record more and more of these more and more often. And the whole mobile idea was the whole point at the time, to make this show more, frequent. And yes, I'll be going mobile again, but this is an ultimate opportunity to go into the studio and have like a little better quality audio, and I hope you appreciate. And it's better, even though mobile, the audio has gotten better and better over the years, and it's fun to go mobile. Sometimes you're like out in the scene for something, be it something simple like I was out to the hockey rinks and just having a fun conversation, innocent conversation about that, or just, I'm not able to come home and do the show, so to speak, at the time, and I'd rather have a, short but in-depth conversation about something going on out there in the real world, like Mamdani elections and such. So obviously a terrible thing. We'll have something to say about that at some point. I apologize, mostly because it's not like he's going away at the moment. I wish he would. So it's not like I had to talk about it right there, Johnny, on the spot. There'll be more and more things to say as we go forward, and of course locally, the news is the news is bottomless when it comes to the liberal garbage here in the state of Minnesota. With that said, thank you so much for listening. God bless you. Happy Thanksgiving. And God bless the United States of America.